Dylan, start the car. This is creeping me out. Dylan, who is that? What is that?
We are talking the Arkansas Pigman Massacre, written and directed by J.T. Chris. Now, this appears to be a super low budget, almost amateurish movie. I suspect most of the people involved in this film are kind of friends and family of J.T. Chris. The movie starts with a kind of a cruel saying about this legend of this Pigman, and there's been a variety of murders. And the film focuses on these two 12-year-old girls who end up getting a lift with their older brother, one of their older brothers, to go somewhere. But their car breaks down and they end up in the kind of the wilderness, being chased by this Pigman. What will happen? You will have to watch the movie and find out. So, now, I'm going to be right up front with this one. This is a very low budget film. It's not a particularly good movie, this one. But let me see if I can find some things to say about this movie that do deserve some praise at the very least. I think it is an interesting idea here to have a slasher movie with child protagonists. We have seen child protagonists in kind of horror movies before. You know, monster squads, things like, even shows like kind of Stranger Things. But we're talking kids rather than teens. And I don't remember seeing a slasher movie, which is really not really a kind of family horror movie like the aforementioned, with actual child leads. So it's an interesting choice. And I have to say, you know, obviously having two 12-year-old girls, and they looks like they've cast actual 12-year-old girls around the age. These are not like teenagers playing 12-year-olds. These do look like young, you know, children. Having them being chased around by a masked man, you know, it kind of makes you feel, oh, this is a bit uncomfortable to watch this, to be honest. It's a little bit, you know, a little bit icky, really. And I guess, in a way, that's probably you know, more affecting than possibly a teenage protagonists. But maybe that's why we haven't seen so many of these. But yeah, I thought that was an interesting idea at the very least. It's also shot out in the kind of the woods and the kind of the open kind of wilderness area. So it's making kind of use of the natural environment and everything, so there's no like dodgy sets or anything like that. It's all kind of outside. The Pigman itself is just a dude wearing a mask, but some of the kind of the sound effects that they've actually used like pig squeals and stuff, suggesting that he's actually kind of making these sounds. And you know, it's I think the sound effects do give it a little bit of a monstrous quality, because this is not a guy making pig sounds. This is actually pig sounds like that have been recorded and playing, which sounds, you know, obviously inhuman. And as such, it kind of, you know, is a little bit creepier, I suppose. So that was kind of, you know, I think the sound effects probably did the movie a favour here. And there's an attempt here, a little bit of kind of like low budget gore and stuff. And we have to sort of, you know, bear in mind this is clearly a movie made for probably less than a couple of $1,000s, I would imagine. Now, let me talk about the acting. Now, the acting isn't great, let me just say this, but I'm going to defend our two young protagonists here, our two young actresses, because this is such a low budget film, and this is obviously not having even child actors that have probably gone to Juilliard or anything like that, or has been trained, you know, particularly sort of formally, and have a huge amount of experience. And I gotta say, I think these two girls did the best that they probably could in a film like this. I actually don't think, you know, yeah, you could broadly say the acting isn't particularly great in this movie, and that will be a fair comment. But I do think these two young girls probably gave as good a performance as you can probably hope to get in a movie like this. So you know, I didn't think they were terrible if you consider the low budget and the kind of the gonzo style of filmmaking that we've got here. You know, they probably did a reasonable job. I don't think you probably could have expected a huge, much better unless you were kind of up in the budget and you were having more, you know, sort of trained child actors and stuff like that. So I'll kind of defend the acting here for these two young girls, because I didn't think they did a horrible job, if I'm honest. I think, you know, they can probably be quite happy with this based on the kind of the budget of the movie that it is. Okay, so let's talk about the negatives here. And there's not really any story in this movie. It is just these two girls being chased around by the woods by a man in a pig mask. That's kind of it. There's nothing really more complicated than that. We get a couple of other kind of like kills of random people that we kind of run across. That's it. That's the story. So really not much of a narrative in this one, to be honest with you. It is just kind of like this this very, very basic story. But even the story that we do have, I don't know if it really made sense. Let me just give you a couple of examples here. All right, so our first kill, we see this woman, and she's like a biker, and then she sort of sets up a tent in this woodland area. Anyway, she ends up spotting the Pigman, so she runs away. Sounds all, you know, fairly good so far. Runs away and then circles back to the tent, and she appears to have lost the Pigman. But then she just gets back in the tent and starts, like, you know, getting ready for the night. I thought, you've just been chased around, but in this very area by a guy dressed in a pig mask. Surely you wouldn't get back in the tent and, like, you'll just get out. You'll just be out of there. But no, that's what happens. You know, for example, at the very end of this movie, without spoiling anything, it has a left turn and adds this like random supernatural element. And I think, what? So what's actually going on here? And it's just like, so even the actual very basic story that we have is confusing. So, yay? Anyway. So yeah, the story is slight, but even that they've managed to kind of botch and have sort of like silly elements to it. The acting isn't good, generally speaking. As I said, I think you can have some defence for these young girls, considering they have so much screen time. You know, they are expected to carry a lot of the weight. But generally speaking, you know, the acting isn't particularly strong. It's not surprising in a film like this, to be honest. I mean, that's should be part of the course, really. It's not the worst, I suppose, but yeah, generally speaking, all the actors that we have on screen, you know, probably not going to have an Oscar in their future anytime soon. VFX-wise, our Pigman is like wearing a shop-bought rubber mask. And it's unclear whether he's actually meant to be someone in a mask, because he's wearing clothes and has like utensils and stuff, or he's meant to be some type of genetic creature, because it kind of looks like a guy in a mask, and that's what it appears to be. But then why is he making actual pig sounds? And then we have this, as I say, this kind of supernatural element which suggests something else. And again, it seems really, I mean, I guess it's going to be mysterious, I suppose, but it's just like, okay. I mean, VFX-wise, there's nothing to really shout home about in the kind of the gore. It's all kind of low-budget stuff, not particularly kind of gory or anything like that. So there's an attempt here to have the Pigman kind of eating the kind of like the guts and stuff of people, but it's obviously low-budget. You can probably forgive that if you're watching this channel, to be honest with you. You know, a lot of it is kind of shot in the day. There are some kind of like choices that have made in regards to sort of direction and stuff like that. I think, you know, somewhat questionable. It may have been more effective had this movie had a little bit more of our antagonist like hidden for a while or partially obscured to kind of give you a sense of stalking and dread and stuff like that. But it's not really. It doesn't really have. We see him in the broad daylight the first time we see him. So, you know, it's really lacking any sort of genuine sort of scares or sort of tension and stuff. ultimately, I've got to say, this movie is seems quickly put together. It seems very low budget. It seems like it hasn't been particularly well thought through, and as such, only really going to appeal for very, very low budget gonzo fans of slasher films. But it's, to be honest with you, I'm going to give it a 3 out of 10. I think it's relatively weak overall, to be honest. Have you seen it? What did you think? Leave me a comment and I'll look forward to seeing you next time.